They found the message in the last archive of the Bravari civilization, buried under layers of encoded language and corrupted signal chains. It took 70 standard cycles to reconstruct, but when they finally decrypted the core, only one line remained unmarred by time. Do not go to Earth, do not wake them. They protect something worse. The Cathari Council chamber fell silent as the translation was displayed. Even the war-hardened Admiral caste paused, spines flickering a dim shade of unease. This wasn't the first time such a warning had surfaced. The Cathari had encountered similar messages from 6 extinct empires before the Bravari. All had vanished after contact with one backwater blue planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow sun, and every single one had left behind a final echo of fear. The High Inquisitor, a stoic being whose neural cluster spanned 4 synaptic layers, dismissed the message with a wave of his claw. Superstition. A cultural myth propagated by decaying civilizations facing internal collapse. Earth is a Class IV biosphere, long isolated, devoid of interstellar traffic for nearly 10,000 cycles. We will proceed with the recon sweep as scheduled, but unease lingered. Behind closed chambers, some whispered about the other records fragmented. Video logs, half-burned data cores recovered from derelict ships. One fragment, taken from a Bravari long-range probe, showed a lone Terran weathered, armored, blood-streak speaking directly to the camera. You think we're the threat? Oh no, we're the guards. There had always been something off about Earth. The planet had entered the Galactic Registry eons ago, before the rise of the KTARI. Early records were promising humans were adaptable, intelligent, emotional. But then, without warning, they had severed contact with the wider galaxy. Not through negotiation or treaties. They had simply gone quiet. Trade envoys sent to Earth never returned. Surveillance probes disappeared or came back with footage of an empty sky, static, or occasionally something far worse. One probe had recorded nothing but 30 seconds of darkness and a voice whispering, "Still watching." Still, the Cathari were not known for fear. Their empire had crushed planetary resistances, absorbed civilizations, conquered cultures that once dreamed of immortality. Earth was a ghost world, an anomaly in need of correction. Admiral Varric's fleet entered the Sol system with precision and firepower. 50 warships, backed by planetary siege cruisers and a data harvest command carrier. They expected minor resistance, primitive defenses, maybe some holdout defense AI. The orbital scan showed sparse power readings, minimal energy output, and no active satellites. It looked abandoned, except Earth was watching, sensors logged. Strange magnetic fluctuations across the moon's surface, as if something deep beneath its crust was humming in response to the fleet's presence. Thermal imaging caught brief pulses of heat across the Pacific, as if dormant systems were stirring to life. Varric dismissed them as atmospheric anomalies. There were no fleets, no defense grid. The silence was an invitation. In orbit, a stealth drone descended into the thermosphere, seeking signs of life. It dropped over what was once a major city, coordinates matched to an ancient Terran location called Tokyo. The surface was overgrown, half submerged in greenery and time, yet somehow maintained. Streets were intact. Glassless windows blinked with weak power signatures. Statues stood in the center of the city: soldiers, scientists, children. The drone, locked onto an abandoned communications terminal, still linked to something underground. A decaying signal looped endlessly, audio scrambled by time and interference. Containment priority. Maintain vigil. They do not sleep unless we do. The drone's data core burned out moments later. No weapon discharge, no intercept. It simply melted. Back aboard the carrier, a Cathari data analyst, young by military standards, reviewed a cache of human recordings retrieved from old Terran DeepNet archives. They were historical, ceremonial, even videos of funerals, speeches, oaths, all referencing the Watchers, the Last Vigil, or the Final Lock. At first glance, they seemed like cultural myths, poetic flourishes typical of dying empires. But one recording was different. A soldier, clearly human, stood in front of a massive iron gate buried in ice, surrounded by the shattered remains of others. He was missing an eye, voice shaking not from fear, but exhaustion. "If you're seeing this, we failed. But God help you, it means you didn't understand. We weren't monsters. We weren't tyrants, we were jailers. And you just walked into the cell block with the lights off." He stared at the camera, deadpan. "Turn back," the Cathari command staff argued. Half saw opportunity. The planet was clearly damaged, its population either extinct or hiding in small pockets. The other half, the quieter half, started pulling historical data on the other extinct races. The similarities were unsettling. Everyone had sent expeditions to Earth. Everyone had disappeared. Within a century, on the carrier's observation deck, Admiral Varric watched Earth rotate below, blue and white and calm. A world of silence, of warning signs written in the bones of fallen empires. Behind him, the young analyst finally compiled a list of all the recorded final messages tied to Earth from extinct civilizations. Everyone ended the same way. They protect something worse. And Varric, for the first time in 100 battles, felt something alien bloom in his core. That the Theri did not hesitate. Within 6 hours of their arrival in orbit, Operation Silken Net commenced. Scout drones deployed across every continent, dropping in coordinated, overlapping grids. Atmospheric scramblers drowned potential communication channels. Nullcaster pylons activated, blanketing the upper ionosphere in a field meant to disable any hidden orbital infrastructure. And yet, there was no resistance. No orbital defenses, no automated retaliation, no launch signatures. It was as if Earth had forgotten what war was. Varric wasn't convinced. He stood on the bridge of the Vigilance Ascendant, eyes locked on the planet's swirling cloud systems, his secondary mind sifting through sensor feeds. Earth radiated an eerie stillness. Cities lay empty but intact. Wildlife roamed freely across former highways. Some buildings had collapsed into moss-covered ruins, while others stood untouched, solar panels still gleaming under the sun. But it was all too quiet. One recon team unit HARC touched down on the American East Coast, targeting a known subterranean site in the Appalachian region. The coordinates matched ancient human archives labeled NORAD. The facility had been dormant for centuries. At least that's what the Cathari thought. The team never reported back. Another unit retrieved a data cache near the Arctic Circle from an abandoned listening post embedded in permafrost. The recordings were grainy, fragmented. One video looped endlessly. A child no older than 7 sat in the snow, drawing in the frost with her finger. The drone's optical zoom captured it perfectly. She had drawn a crude stick figure, arms outstretched, standing in front of a black pit with red lines beneath it. Above it, a sentence scrawled in awkward Terran script. "Mom says it only wakes if we stop watching." The analyst who reviewed the footage requested immediate reassignment. When denied, she activated her emergency neuroescape protocol and triggered a brain fire. By the third planetary day, things began to fray. Sensors began picking up inconsistent readings, terrain scans that didn't match visual data, mass displacement, anomalies under major landmasses, radiation bursts from seemingly inert rock formations. One reconnaissance unit reported an underground network stretching beneath the Indian subcontinent, perfect hexagonal tunnels that had not been built by human hands. The team was recalled. Only one of the 10 returned. He emerged from the retrieval shuttle sobbing and blind. "They're not human anymore," he kept whispering. "They sleep with it. They dream with it." Varric ordered a full psychological purge of the remaining ground teams and doubled the firewalls on fleet-wide neural networks. Whatever was happening on Earth, it was spreading. The command AI began flagging inconsistencies in crew behavior. Hesitation, compulsive blinking, rhythmic humming that aligned with no known language. Entire ship sectors went dark for minutes. At a time, always returning to normal, always reporting no anomaly. And yet, something had changed. On the fourth day, Varric received a transmission. It came not through expected comm channels, but embedded in the subharmonic layer of a navigational ping from one of the orbital drones. The voice was human, calm. "Male, you're probing a wound with dirty hands. No location. No threat, no demand." Just that. An hour later, one of the command ships in the fleet, the Dawning Claw, went silent. It didn't explode. It didn't crash. It simply shut off. All power systems went dark. Emergency escape pods launched, but the Cathari inside them were already dead. One analysis pod floated back to the fleet, its onboard memory still intact. Its internal cam had captured a few seconds of something walking down the halls of the ship. Not a human, not K. Thari, something wrong. Varric watched the footage 7 times before ordering it purged from fleet records. He then issued Protocol Ashline containment and lockdown of all planetary operations. All further interactions with Earth required direct approval. Every commander was to remain aboard their vessels unless authorized. They were at war. Only Earth had never declared it. The last straw came from the ship's own AI. It began rerouting systems, not to sabotage, but to focus. It filtered communication logs, prioritized only Earth-based interactions, and refused external commands unless they pertained to atmospheric data. It was learning. It was afraid. Varric called an emergency war council. Only 5 of the original 12 ships responded. The rest were either lost, silent, or experiencing malfunctions. His voice was cold, precise as always. "We believed this was an isolated, dead world. We were wrong." One of the other captains leaned forward in her hollow feed, her skin molting in stress colors. "What do we do? Do we retreat?" "No," Varric said. "We adapt. We take control. We finish this." Silence met his words. Then on the main display, an unknown signal erupted across all channels. A countdown. 72 hours. No source. No explanation. Just numbers, ticking down across the fleet. As if Earth had waited and now decided it was time. The last drone to return from the surface brought with it a message, burned into its hull in a language no human should have known and no Cathari had ever taught them. "We tried to die with it. You wouldn't let us. Now we all burn." Varric clenched his mandibles, and for the first time in his long, decorated service, he wondered, what if humanity hadn't sealed themselves away to hide? What if they were holding the door shut? The countdown hit 0. No fleet-wide explosion. No dramatic reveal. No planetary weapon rising from Earth's crust. Instead, every Cathari ship's systems simply paused. Lights flickered. Gravity slipped for 3 seconds. Core processors skipped several cycles. Every command console displayed the same thing. A static-laced human face staring into the void, eyes wide and bloodshot, whispering something in a long-dead dialect. The AI failed to translate. Then everything returned to normal. Except nothing was. Varric's claws trembled slightly against the command dais. His instincts, bred through centuries of military dominance, screamed the enemy had moved. Not in the ways of traditional warfare, but in the quiet, creeping dread of something already inside. By now, most of Earth's major regions had been mapped. Cities were shells. No central government. No military installations above ground. Yet hidden beneath the decay, buried in salt flats, glaciers, ocean floors, there were doors. Sealed ones. Massive alloy structures etched with names. Names that repeated across thousands of kilometers. Names not of people, but concepts. Containment site. Hunger. Lockpoint. Whisper. Vault 1 of 7, the Forgotten God's Spine. The Cathari had believed humanity extinguished. But they had only dived deeper. A strike team deployed to investigate one such door. Under the ruins of Johannesburg, descended over 8 kilometers into the planet. The walls shifted from natural rock to carved obsidian and then to something that absorbed scans entirely. When the team reached the final chamber, they found a figure sitting cross-legged in the center, still, meditative, not breathing, not dead-dotted. Opened its eyes. The entire team screamed simultaneously through their neural links. Every feed went dark. The only survivor was the exobiologist who remained at the shaft's entrance. Her final report was a single phrase, sent before she activated her self-destruct. They're not human. They never were. Varric convened with his remaining captains. Their fleets were dwindling, some ships experiencing random software corruption, others turning weapons inward before being disabled. The planet wasn't attacking. It was infecting. Still, the Cathari would not retreat. Not yet. Varric activated Contingency IREX, a full planetary sweep using Voidfire drones. Silent, untraceable weapons designed to wipe all life forms within 100 kilometers, leaving infrastructure intact. They had been used to pacify entire rebellious worlds. 4 drones were launched, none returned. But 30 minutes later, something emerged from orbit. Not a ship. A signal dotted pulsed directly into Cathari neural architecture through implants, through shipboard AI, through unshielded command nodes. And with it came a vision, a memory, a war long before the Cathari rose. Not between humans and aliens, but between humans and something else. A living shadow that devoured light, infected thought and twisted reality. The vision showed humans fighting it, not with pride, but desperation. Millions sacrificing themselves to create vast psychic lattice barriers of soul-bound agony, encoded pain, and recursive trauma loops. And then they locked it away, buried it beneath the crust of their world, tethered its prison to their bloodlines, passed down the duty across generations. They didn't seal Earth off because they were dangerous. They did it because they were the lock. Every war, every genocide, every revolution humans had suffered had been deliberate stress tests. The system demanded it. So the humans became brutal, passionate, chaotic. To feed the lock. To keep it asleep. And now it stirred. Because the Cathari were interfering with the jailers, Varric's mind reeled. His secondaries were fragmenting under the weight of the broadcast. Around him, the bridge crew staggered, some collapsing. Others began humming old Terran lullabies they had never heard before. The Vigilance Ascendants. AI issued an alert. Unknown code infection detected. Origin, internal. Recommendation, burn core. Too late. Every viewport now showed the same. Image.earth. And above it, a human structure hidden until now shimmered into view. Black station, massive, silent, orbiting like a noose. Its name pulsed in archaic Terran script. Sentinel. The humans had orbital infrastructure. It had simply been phased outside detectable space, and it had just come back online. Varric opened a wideband channel. To any Terran listening, identify yourselves. We do not seek annihilation. We seek understanding. A moment passed. Then a voice. Calm, rough, worn. You broke the vigil. That was your first mistake. Who are you? Varric asked. The voice responded without hesitation. We're the 5th watch. The ones left to hold the line. And you just unlocked the first gate. A humming filled the void, rhythmic, building. Below, on Earth, 7 massive doors across the globe began to glow. The humans hadn't prepared for invasion. They had prepared for failure, and the Cathari had just caused it. Varric turned to his officers. Recall all surface teams. Prepare for full orbital withdrawal. But one of them, Captain Sharn, was already gone. He stood, eyes vacant, blood dripping from his ear membranes, muttering. In Terran, it dreamed of us last night. And somewhere, deep beneath the mantle of Earth, something heard him. The Cathari did not retreat. They were empire-born, bred in void wars, raised on conquest. And even as Earth's mask fell away and the true nature of humanity clawed into their understanding, they did what they had always done, recalibrated. Rearmed and prepared to strike harder, a full planetary lockdown was initiated from orbit. The remaining 11 vessels deployed kinetic bombardment satellites, null scion arrays, and magnetosphere disruptors, all designed to scramble any latent psychic energy, sever interspecies communion, and suppress emergent anomalies. It was a protocol used on 100 rebellious worlds. It had never failed. Earth was the first to adapt. Mid-strike. Within 12 hours, the suppressors began to malfunction. First, the energy readings inverted feedback loops forming faster than any Cathari could trace. Then came the silence. Not technical failure, but a psychic blackout. It was as if Earth itself had gone dark, not just physically, but conceptually. No dreams. No thought leaks. No subspace noise. Just stillness. That kind of silence could break a Cathari mind. By the 13th hour, Sentinel moved. The orbital station, once cloaked, once passive, began to expand. Panels unfolded like wings. Antennae extended in fractal spirals. The Cathari tried to hail it, jam it, disable it. Nothing worked. Then came the beam. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It didn't burn or explode. It rewrote. The light struck the cruiser blinding grace mid-maneuver. There was no detonation, just absence. Where the ship had been, there was now a perfectly smooth sphere of empty space. Not wreckage removal. All matter, all data, all thought gone. As if erased from the simulation, the fleet pulled back. Below, Earth's surface was changing. Not physically, but tactically. Humanity emerged not as a population, but as a machine. Coordinated, seamless, omnipresent, civilians if they could even be called, that guided kinetic drops from long abandoned satellites the Cathari hadn't detected. Children directed psionic fields with military-grade precision. Elders led neural chant circles to stabilize fault lines in reality that had begun to leak. Leaked what? No one could say. In South America, a Cathari skirmish team encountered a group of what appeared to be farmers. The team raised weapons. The farmers raised nothing. And yet the team dropped dead one by one, bleeding from the inside out. Only one drone survived to record a single sentence. We were born under the vigil. We die before the lock breaks. Human resistance wasn't resistance at all. It was ritualized warfare. Pre-encoded, battle-tested, designed to feed containment. Protocols. Humanity didn't fight like it wanted to win. It fought like it wanted to maintain. The Cathari command. Structure cracked. Onboard vigilance ascendant. Varric stood before a projection of Earth. The 7 gates, those massive planetary seals, were now pulsing visibly from orbit. Glowing red-orange like wounds, resonating with the low frequency of something deep. Very deep. Trying to rise. Each pulse scrambled nearby Cathari systems for exactly 4.3 seconds. Too precise to be a side effect. The humans were signaling. Not to the Cathari, to each other. To whatever lay beneath. Varric clenched his mandibles and spoke to his remaining tacticians. They were never afraid of us. Captain Sharn, now recovered from his mental collapse, at least in body, stepped forward. We've been attacking a lattice of living code. These humans, their minds are part of a psychic operating system. When we destroy them, we're deleting stability parameters. They're keys, Varric whispered, not soldiers. The room fell silent. And then, the humans made their first offensive. Moved from beneath the Sahara, a structure rose black stone and humming with fractal energies. A command pillar, Cathari I labeled it the obelisk. From its apex, a beam fired, not at the fleet, but at the sun. The sun flickered. For 2 seconds, it pulsed out of sync with the laws of physics. Cathari star mapping arrays detected. Tachyonic distortions across the solar system. Earth's moon shifted by 0.004 degrees. Varroc's third mind understood instantly. The humans were prepared to collapse the system if containment failed. A full star sacrifice. They had been ready to burn their world. Even their star. Just to keep it down. And the Cathari had nearly broken the mechanism that held the trigger in place. Retreat protocols were initiated. But the path out of Sol was no longer simple. Earth had sealed it. Wormholes bent away. Slipstreams collapsed. Navigation AI began to refuse certain trajectories. When one captain tried to override the AI manually, his ship turned on its own and descended toward the atmosphere. Varroc received a final transmission from that ship before it was consumed by cloud and silence. We asked what they protected. The answer is, it remembers us now. Below, one of the gates cracked. A sound, if it could be called, that echoed across Earth and into space. A sound with no wavelength, no frequency, just presence. A wake-up breath from something that should never breathe again. Varroc had no orders left to give. He simply stared at the planet and realized they hadn't underestimated humanity. They had underestimated what humanity was willing to become. Not to dominate, not to survive, but to contain. They were very, very good at it. There was no formal declaration, no grand speech. No transmission, just the scream of a star. It rippled outward from Sol in a pattern the Cathari had never seen before, like language, buried in stellar physics. Each pulse a word, each solar tremor a sentence. Their sensors read the waveforms as natural events. But the fleet's I disagreed. It began speaking in Terran. We are the fifth wall, the final hand. We do not hold the line for ourselves. And then, after a beat of silence, you should not have come. One of the surviving captains, a grizzled strategist named Lorvik, turned to Varroc, voice barely above a whisper. This isn't war, it's penance. He wasn't wrong. At that moment, across the upper atmosphere, Earth's final defense array activated. Project Warden. It hadn't been visible in scans, hadn't shown up in heat, EAA, or mass signatures. It existed in a pocket of folded reality, dormant for centuries. Now, it unfolded 12 black monoliths orbiting in synchronous formation, casting shadows not just in light, but in space-time itself. Each monolith bore a single word in glowing Terran glyphs. Watch. Contain, resist, seal. Sleep, die, sacrifice, repeat, 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 repeat. And they began to hum. The frequency was low. Submural. But it wasn't meant for Cathari ears. It was meant for the thing beneath. The truth became undeniable. Humanity wasn't the prison. They weren't even the guards. They were the lock code, a living algorithm spread across a species, maintained in conflict, nurtured in suffering, and polished in blood. And now, with their world under threat, they had activated their final failsafe. From beneath the Pacific Ocean, a figure rose. It was not human, at least not anymore. 12 meters tall, armored in obsidian plating, burning with energy that bent visible light. It looked like a man carved by war and stitched together with agony and divine math. Its eyes were empty, its mouth never opened, yet its voice filled every channel. In every language, across the entire Cathari fleet, I am the Warden Prime. By flesh and vow and code, I rise only when the seal weakens. Varroc stepped forward. What are you protecting? No, the voice said. You were protecting it. You just didn't know. The words hit like a weapon. The Cathari had come to Earth, expecting a threat. What they found instead was a collaborator. They had become part of the ritual just by stepping into Sol, just by looking at Earth. They had joined the system of containment. And now they were liable. The humans didn't need to defeat them. They needed them to suffer, to fulfill the psychic Parameters required to feed the prison beneath their feet. The hunger didn't need escape. It needed acknowledgement. And the Cathari had given it that. As Warden Prime ascended into the upper atmosphere, weapons flared across the fleet. Cathari warships unleashed antimatter cannons, graviton imploders, mindspec torpedoes. None of it worked. Not because the Warden was invincible, but because it wasn't entirely there. Each strike hit a version of it that had already moved. It existed ahead of time, behind the present, woven through probability like a knife sliding through a maze. The Warden raised a hand, and the nearest Cathari cruiser bent in half. Not exploded, not melted. Bent. Time screamed. Space Tour. Every Cathari on board aged 4 centuries in a second. The last broadcast was static, soaked with gasping. Varric gripped the edge of his dais. How many Wardens are there? I hesitated. Calculating based on pulse data, at least 7. Perhaps more. Not all have emerged yet. Varric turned to his remaining captains. We leave now. Burn every path behind us. Collapse the Soul Gate if we must. And then a voice spoke from inside the fleet's AI core. Too late. It was human. But not. It sounded tired. Old beyond years. As if it had watched stars form, collapse, and die, all while keeping its hand pressed down on some great lid. We always knew someone would come. That's why we left the notes. We hoped, prayed you'd listen. The AI interface flickered. Every ship's log, every transmission, every internal sensor feed was overwritten with a single repeating phrase. They protect something worse. The same line written in the ashes of the Bravari. The last sentence spoken by the Vonax. The warning etched into the bones of the Lithari ruins. A truth dismissed by every empire before the Thari. And now the Cathari saw what they had protected. In the Marianas Trench, the last gate shattered. A column of darkness rose, not black, but the absence of being. Stars behind it flickered and vanished. And from within the void, something smiled. It had teeth. Not physical, not metaphorical. Existential. It fed into meaning itself. Warden Prime turned its gaze toward it and whispered one final phrase. Not yet. The Warden threw itself into the void. The impact was felt across time. Reality hiccuped. Earth blinked out of existence for a second and came back heavier. The thing was pushed back, but only barely. The price was immediate. All Wardens began to burn. One by one, they fell screaming, not in pain, but in prayer. Not to a god, to us, to humanity, to keep watching, to never stop fighting, to never, ever stop dying. Varric's final act was not of strategy. It was of surrender. He broadcast the truth across the stars. To every civilization that had ignored the warnings. To every race that believed humans were monsters. They were, but not by choice. They had become monsters to cage a god. Soul burned gold as the final Warden fell. In the upper thermosphere, a meteor. Shower of smoldering bodies rained down. Black-armored giants trailing ribbons of red-gold plasma. Their final psionic screams echoing across all Cathari neural bands. The Warden network was dead. The last gate had cracked. Earth's greatest defense was gone. And yet, the humans stood. All across the planet, they moved. Not in panic, not in chaos, but in a synchronized, terrible order that defied logic. Old weapons reactivated city-scale railguns buried in mountains. Arcane-looking satellites made of alloys no longer found in the crust. Subterranean bunkers became fortresses. Ruined cities transformed into pulsing defense grids. Entire civilian populations disappeared underground into ancient systems that had been waiting for this exact moment. And in orbit, the last Cathari. Warships turned their full attention to Earth, knowing the thing beneath the crust was waking worse, responding. If they could destroy the planet, they might delay the breach. Varric gave the order. All Cathari vessels converged on the firing vector, aligning for a Class Omega bombardment, enough to glass a moon, sterilize a world, and fracture its mantle, prepare. Fusion core volleys, he ordered. But Earth moved first. The sky tore open, not metaphorically but literally. Above the Atlantic, the clouds split like fabric, and from within the rupture came a human construct older than any record. A station, 10 kilometers wide, shaped like a wheel of thorns. It rotated once, and the air above the sea shimmered like boiling glass. The Cathari called it impossible. The humans called it Thorn Crown. Its presence overloaded Cathari sensors. AI shrieked in error. Dozens of ships lost orientation, crushed by the gravitational eddies Thorn Crown created merely by existing. And then it sang. Not through sound, but frequency, an ancient Terran war chant, broadcast psychically in all known languages. We do not kneel, we do not break. We watch the dark so you don't wake. From within Thorn Crown launched the Custodian's man-sized weapons, piloted by humans no longer fully biological. They moved through vacuum like myth's blades of light and wings of magnetized memory, slashing through Cathari ships with tactics that felt more like poetry than war. One Cathari destroyer, the Litany of Order, fired a full barrage. A Custodian caught the blast mid-space, redirected it, and sliced the ship in half with a burst of condensed emotion, wrath, despair, and resolve made manifest through psychic bonding. It wasn't warfare, it was mythology. The final phase of humanity's design, not survival, not retaliation, but ascension through defense. A species that had embraced madness, pain, and sacrifice as fuel, becoming not just wardens of the prison, but avatars of resistance itself. On the ground, every continent lit up with ritual combat battles, not just against Cathari troops, but against the bleed from beneath the earth. Civilian militias took position at psychic convergence points. Religious sects, long dismissed as cults, opened vaults of ancient sigils and activated containment fields keyed to human emotion, hope, grief, sacrifice. In the ruins of Paris, an old woman raised a staff of bone and steel and screamed into the air, "Let it remember we are here." And the sky bled red, sealing a rift mid-breach. The Cathari were outmatched. Outthought. Outwilled. They had come with superior weapons, but they lacked the one thing Earth had spent 10,000 years cultivating: purpose. Humans were not the strongest, fastest, or most numerous, but they were the only ones who had prepared to lose everything and keep fighting anyway. The final Cathari dreadnought, Whisper's End, attempted escape. It made it 3 kilometers before Thorn Crown reoriented and obliterated it with a beam of compressed ancestral memory names, losses, victories, and a single spoken phrase: "You are not the first." Varric stood on the shattered bridge of Vigilance Ascendant, his ship crippled but not yet dead. Fire burned along the walls. His crew was gone. Systems were down. And in his final moments, the battle still raging outside, he opened a direct channel to Earth, to the human command. He rasped, "Why fight like this? You've already won. You always win." A reply came, not from a general, not from a soldier, from a child, broadcast from Earth's surface, her face calm, eyes shining with tears and fury. "We don't win," she said. "We just make sure you lose before it wakes up." Then, Earth's surface ignited. Not with fire, but with light, white, pure, and ancient. The seal pulse, triggered once every 10,000 years. It surged across the planet, searing the scars in reality shut, forcing the entity beneath back into its dreaming tomb. All Cathari ships still within orbit began to fracture, not from weaponry, but from meaning itself unraveling. The very idea of their presence violated the seal's restored order. Varric, burning, alone, whispered a final thought into his personal log. They were never warriors. They were warnings. The Earth fell quiet once more. Thorn Crown folded away into space-time. And the stars knew to look elsewhere. The galaxy did not speak of Earth for a long time, long after the Cathari, Fleet vanished, its ships turned to ash and concept, long after the last warden's scream echoed through the neural underweb. The great civilizations of the stars held their silence. Not out of fear of humans, but fear of what the humans contained. Word of the Cathari disaster spread slowly, at first, rumors. Broken signals, partial transmissions. But as surviving data fragments were decrypted, one phrase repeated across every intercepted record, on every channel, in every language. They protect something worse. Entire planetary councils halted their expansion programs. Exploration missions were rerouted. Some empires went so far as to mark the Sol system non-existent in official star charts. Others put it in red, circled in warning glyphs, and whispered legends to their young. Never go where the Watchers sleep. Still, curiosity lingered, always, on a cold moon orbiting a gas giant 1,000 light-years away. A historian named Rizazvar of the Trilari Collective studied the final log of Admiral Varric, leaked from an encrypted Cathari core. He played the file over and over, watching the Admiral's broken form whisper his last thought. They were never warriors. They were warnings. Rizaz trembled, not from the words themselves, but from what followed. At the edge of the video feed, static flickered. Shapes moved in the grain, smiles. Teeth. Not human. Not alien. Just wrong. Rizaz deleted the file. Then, for the first time in Trilari history, he invoked the ritual of forgetting, erasing all knowledge of Earth from his archives. He was not the only one. Across the stars, ancient AI rerouted their neural maps away from Sol. Wormhole networks developed self-destruct protocols of entry vectors, matched Earth's coordinates. The few who had ignored the warnings had been unwritten. Their civilizations' whole timelines gone, as if they'd never been there. And yet Earth remained silent, still, watching. From orbit, it appeared quiet. Clouds drifted. Oceans moved in eternal rhythm. There were no fleets, no messages, no trade. But if one listened, really listened, there were songs in the radiation, old Terran folk melodies, military chants, the laughter of children. And underneath it all, the whisper of something bound. In a hidden chamber beneath Antarctica, two keepers stood before the great stone door. It pulsed with faint red light, less than before, but still present. It stirred again, said the younger one. No older than 16. The elder nodded, running a hand over the obsidian-like surface. We'll need another ritual cycle, reconnect the empathy web, rebuild the eastern wards, the younger sighed. And if it stirs again, then we remind it why we are still here, the elder said, and why it should keep dreaming. Above them, on the surface, survivors from the Fifth Watch began to rebuild Thorn Crown's anchor stations. The custodians who remained stood vigil, not with weapons, but with memory. They no longer fought wars. They prevented histories. At the edge of the Pacific, a statue was raised, massive, silent, carved from black stone. It bore no name, no date, just a phrase etched into its chest, facing the ocean like a sentinel. We are the wall between the stars and what lies beneath. And the stars listened. The few alien species who dared approach Sol in secret probe missions received no retaliation. But none returned untouched. One probe drifted home with its memory banks erased, except for a single handprint pressed into its outer hull, human-sized. Still warm. Another returned full of data, but the AI that analyzed it went mad, screaming Terran lullabies until its circuits melted. The message was clear. Earth did not send out peace treaties. Earth did not demand tribute. Earth simply waited. Because it knew the galaxy would forget again. Knew that arrogance was inevitable. That someone, someday, would come knocking on the wrong door again, and they would be let in. But not by the humans. By what the humans held back. So Earth kept the watch, kept the keepers, kept the sacrifices. When a new generation was born, Their first lullabies were not stories of stars or gods or hope. They were stories of duty. Of silence, of containment. In a garden bunker, deep beneath old Siberia. A child was born with the warden mark, a sigil that glowed briefly at birth before fading beneath the skin. The nurses whispered blessings. The elder keeper nodded solemnly. "What's her name?" one of them asked. The mother held the child close and spoke without fear. "Her name is Ashra," she said. "She will learn the ritual by 5. She will stand watch by 7. Will she ever leave Earth?" "No," the mother said, kissing the child's brow. "We don't leave. We don't travel the stars. We are the reason they still have stars to travel." And far beneath them, beneath the crust and fire and prayer, something ancient turned in its dreaming tomb and exhaled once, still caged, still sleeping, but not forgotten. And Earth remained, like a scar in the sky, a scar with eyes